Welcome back to Off-Season Outlook. Today we're going to be going over how comparable a prospect Amon-Ra St. was to Makai Lemon. Now they're drawing a lot of comparisons. It makes sense. They both went to USC. They're both similar frames, similar play styles. So let's dive into it. First off, it's very important when considering wide receiver prospects to look at their quarterback play. Now, both had actually pretty identical situations in going to USC. They both kind of teamed up with their five-star quarterback from high school with Amon-Ra St. that was JT Daniels from Modern Day, and with Makai Lemon, that was he and Makai Lemon from Los Al. But both situations did not work out quarterback-wise. Wide receiver-wise, worked out great. JT Daniels ended up going to Georgia, and then Rice, and then flaming, and then West Virginia, and then Rice, and then flaming out. Makai Lemon ended up going to Boise State, and now he's at Syracuse. It did not work out, but neither of them were disgruntled. Neither of them transferred. They both stayed put. Makai Lemon's main quarterbacks were Miller Moss and Jordan Mayava. In Amon-Ra St. it was JT Daniels and Keaton Slovis. Nothing special, nothing amazing. Pretty average quarterbacks across the board, but serviceable. I mean, these two guys, you can really speak to their production by looking at these quarterbacks, because these quarterbacks are not quarterbacks who can make plays themselves. They're not really going to throw a wide receiver open. These guys are security blankets, and no wonder they had so much production, because these quarterbacks relied on them a lot. Now let's take a look at the measurables. Amon-Ra St. comes in at 5'11 and a half, 197. Makai Lemon, 5'11 and an eighth, 192. Pretty much the exact same frames. Wingspan, Amon-Ra St. came at 74 and 5/8 inches. Lemon at 73 and a fourth. Arm length for St. it was 30 and 3/8. Lemon 30 and a half. This is where I'm a little concerned about Lemon hand size. Amon-Ra was 9 and an eighth. Lemon, it was 8 and 3/4, which is 9th percentile. It is very small. Both have an overall compact, muscular frame. Obviously, Amon-Ra is a little bit longer, more lengthy than Lemon, but I really don't think it's enough to draw that much of a difference. Athletically, their measurables are pretty much the same. Amon-Ra St. had a 38.5 inch vert. Makai Lemon was 37. Their 40 times, just comparing their pro day 40 times, because I know Amon-Ra St. ran a 4.61 at the combine. It was a reported 4.51 at his pro day, and since Makai Lemon only did his pro day, I'm just going to compare those two numbers. So with Amon-Ra, it was a 4.51 at the pro day. With Lemon, it was a 4.47. Production is also pretty scarily similar. Total yards and touchdowns at USC, Amon-Ra logged 2,270 yards, 16 touchdowns. With Lemon, it was 2,008 yards and 14 touchdowns. Lemon was basically a non-factor in USC's offense as a freshman. That was Caleb Williams' second season at USC. And Amon-Ra only had 6 games that he could have played in the COVID season in 2020. So they both played a similar amount of games. Yeah, measurables pretty much identical, stats pretty much identical. Now I want to get into some intangibles that they share. Amon-Ra St. what makes him so great in the NFL is that he is strong as a motherfucker. He is strong as hell, and he learns that he gets that strength from his Mr. Olympia father. One of the elite traits that Amon-Ra St. measured out was 20 reps at 225 on the bench press. That is 88th percentile. Now, Makai Lemon did not test in the bench press, but the stats say he plays strong. He broke 21 tackles in 2025 per PFF. That is tied for the 8th most in college football. He also, in one difference between these two receivers that I think is actually a pro for Makai Lemon is Makai Lemon is much more of a deep threat than Amon-Ra St. was at USC. Amon-Ra at USC was never really seen as a deep threat. A lot of people gave him a knock on that in their scouting reports because he really didn't have any big catches downfield. That is not the case with Makai Lemon. He can be a deep threat. He caught 16 passes of 20-plus yards. That is third most in the country. Contested catches are Makai Lemon's middle name. He came down with 10 out of 15 contested catch opportunities. These two guys, you watch their tape, they both lived in the middle of the field. Receivers do not want to live in the middle of the field. They They can feel that linebacker coming over the middle, ready to break them in half, and they get scared. They're not patient. They can't sit in the holes in the defense because they're scared of that hit coming. These two guys are so tough and so comfortable over the middle that they are able to get in those areas where other receivers aren't willing to. It's just as simple as that. They're both modest sized receivers just getting open and making plays because of that comfortability over the middle, and they are not afraid of defenders. Now, one of the most important stats, or one of the most important things that I look at when it comes to wide receivers is breakout age. Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out as a freshman. He had 60 passes caught as a true freshman receiver. He was a polished route runner from the jump, and that is very rare. Now, Makai Lemon's freshman year, he only logged statistics in 3 games. He was buried in a very talented receiver room that had Taj Washington, Zachariah Branch, Brendan Rice. This is why I'm not worried about Makai Lemon's not slow breakout, because as a sophomore he excelled, but why he didn't do it as a freshman. With how crowded that receiver room was, I'm not really concerned about that. Listen, when you look at that receiver room, there's one thing that stands out to me. Zachariah Branch transferring to Georgia. Makai Lemon could have so easily won it out at USC after his guy, Malachi Nelson, didn't earn the starting spot over Miller Moss. Zachariah Branch left. He went to Georgia. Makai Lemon decided to stay. He decided to tough it out. Makai Lemon in his freshman year took snaps at corner at the end of the season just because of injury needs, just because of what USC just needed bodies on the field. He went all the way from playing corner at the end of his freshman year to winning the Biletnikoff in 2025. That is a story. That is a story. I know he was a 5-star recruit, but still, going from that to the Biletnikoff in 25, and you look at his measurables, it's not, receivers this small just don't really win the Biletnikoff. They're just not there. People prefer the 6'3", Denzel Boston, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson type builds. And yes, those receivers might have a larger upside, but I guarantee you they do not have a higher floor than Makai Lemon. Another statistic I like to point out is that Makai Lemon had 14.7 yards per catch. Amon-Ra St. Brown was 12.8. And this ties into the fact that Makai Lemon is more of a deep threat than Amon-Ra St. Brown was with his contested catch making ability. I just think that Makai Lemon is everything Amon-Ra St. Brown was at USC and more. And I think that his floor is probably the highest out of any receiver in this draft. Maybe you could argue Carnell Tate has a higher floor just because of coming out of that Ohio State Brian Hartline program. Makai Lemon is not going to blow you away with his speed. Obviously, his measurables are... He's small. Like I said, 9th percentile hand size. He doesn't have a good RAS score. He's not running a 4.3, but he is a football player like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is a certified football player. He is not scared to take a hit. He has incredible hands. He is going to be an incredible security blanket for a receiver in the NFL. It's receivers like this that get offenses churning. It's when the pocket collapses. It's when the quarterback needs to avoid a negative play. They need to avoid a sack. They need to avoid, throwing it away, risking an intentional grounding call. They can find this guy in the flats. And Makai Lemon is not scared to be there, and his hands are solid. I mean, he does not drop balls. I think the comparison to Amon-Ra St. Brown is there and more for Makai Lemon. Very talented player. This has been Offseason Outlook. Thank you very much.